Okay, so let's talk about subjects. Subject, the particular word. I don't think we should take this word in a very literal way. It doesn't have to mean that someone is standing there for you and their face is in focus. Sometimes it can be what's in focus, what's not in focus, a detail, an idea, or a topic that it suggests. Sometimes it doesn't have to be in your face, but you can suggest it. And I got this idea from also obviously studying other different photographers, and something I really came across that it's fitting to what I'm trying to say is a quote by Cartier-Bresson when he talks about subjects, and he says that sometimes the greatest subject can be the smallest thing, and that can be a leitmotif. And leitmotif in this case is like the kind of like the recurrent idea or theme present on something or in something. And so I feel like this is very, very timely. And this brings me to the first thing I wanted to talk about, since we're talking about that the smallest thing can be the biggest subject, the smallest detail, is that we need to grow a democratic eye. And what do I mean by democratic eye? I feel like a lot of people talk to you and say like, oh, you need to do this exercise and that exercise to grow your skills as a photographer. And I think that's great. But I also think that we should, in that growth, also practice this idea of democratic eye, meaning your eye that's going to see things in an indiscriminate way. Imagine a room in your house, a room or, a bedroom, a living room. You can take so many pictures there. You can take a picture of someone, in a family gathering, a party, Christmas, whatever. You can take a picture when nobody's there of a certain object, an idea or a feeling that it's passing on to you. You can take a picture of like a smallest detail of a light in a corner. So it can be so many different things. There's an infinite amount of possibilities when it comes to subject matter. And I think this is very, very interesting. For instance, when we look at certain photos in history or certain photographers, I want to bring, for instance, William Eggleston. William Eggleston is known for photographing so many different things, photographing things that are very everyday-like, and, he became known for his color work and etc. And I feel like one of his qualities, or one of the most, things that people talk about when they talk about him, is that the fact that he has a democratic eye, the meaning that he sees value in different things. And so notice that I've said value a couple different times because value is our next point of interest in this video. Value is subjective because it will depend on each and every one of us, how we perceive the world, the type of relationship we build with our surroundings. In other words, you might find more interesting and valuable a sight that I might not find that valuable. Mutable because nothing is static and forever. I mean, you might want to photograph a bench. Sure, you might tell yourself that's a static element. It's not going to move, and hopefully it doesn't. But surely light, shadow, people, the bench's natural aging, the degradation of materials, paint, will definitely turn that bench and the value you place in it mutable, because you might like it more in a certain season, or you might like it more when there's people sitting or nearby. Relative. I say value is relative because it depends on the circumstances you find yourself in. And sometimes that can't be subjective because sometimes this just doesn't depend on you and certain things are out of your control. I also believe here that your state of mind will contribute to how relative things can be for you. But that's a whole nother can of worms to open in a different video. We're talking about subjects, right? And one of the things people struggle with might be how to find them, and we talk about growing a democratic eye, but also in a perspective of someone wanting to build a monograph or project, how to find that idea, that topic, that subject within your project. Well, there's a series of questions you need to ask yourself in this context, and the answers, of course, will come from within, but also from pondering on your experiences. What is it about that particular subject that attracts you? What's your idea in terms of representing that subject? What voice will you have as a photographer? Is it an active voice in a way where your opinion or ideas will be expressed in the photos, or you're standing from an observational point? What style of narrative or story are you building, if you're building any at all? I got given this book last summer for my birthday. by my friend Sarah. So shout out to Sarah. And I kind of toyed around the idea of making a video about this book. And this is a book that reunites different work of, different photographers that photograph people on the margins of society or that have been otherwise marginalized by society. And so this is a very interesting topic, and I feel like it would be a great video. But when I looked at this book, I thought that what I learned the most was the idea or the importance of subject matter. And so how these photographers approach their subjects, and how I could read, there's basically just a short biographical note about these photographers and their work before you start each section. And so I could read their different approaches, and that's what led me actually to this video, because there's a few things in this book that I took at least of ideas and feedback that I think it can be greatly appreciated to be in this video. So first and foremost, I want to talk about getting closer and interacting with your subject. And really, how can this help you growing and bettering yourself as a photographer and a human, really? Sometimes you really need to get closer and interact with your subject to better understand them and better understand why you want to photograph them or the idea that you have in the first place. And this, as a bonus, might lead to circumstances or images that otherwise you wouldn't have created. In case of people, being closer to them usually leaves them more relaxed and open to communicate with you. And I believe this is very true because I was watching a documentary with Joel Meyerowitz the other day, and he was saying that he doesn't mind talking to people he photographs, sometimes saying things like, "Oh, I'm a photographer, and look, I just loved how you came into the scene." Something along these lines. Obviously, don't be creepy. Personally, 2 weeks ago, I had an experience that I was photographing a fun fair. And I was just going around and, obviously when you go around those places and you have a camera, and I was actually photographing with Mamma Mia, which is a heck of a big camera. So people look at you sometimes funny. And there were these two guys, this guy in particular that kept looking at me. He was like working in the rides, one of the rides, a Twister, I believe. And he was just looking at me kind of like puzzling, who are you kind of thing. And I just remember basically I kind of wanted him to not stop looking, but kind of like be more relaxed and be more, just like I'm here, just take some photographs, really don't mind me. And I just kind of like said hi and I smiled and I gave it a thumbs up. A very just, I didn't know him, he didn't know me. It was just a very normal interaction that you have to people. But that led to this photo right here. And I really like this photo, and I would have photographed more, but actually I had to then leave. But anyways, this is just an example of how, it can lead to people sometimes relaxing more with you. And of course, if you're, a fashion photographer or someone who works a lot with people, portrait photographer, you'll know this more better than me. You probably have dealt with these situations. But I really feel like when we're doing street photography or we're doing work around unfamiliar places, it's really good to be just nice and kind to people. Of course, sometimes it is hard because you want to focus on certain things, but if someone wants to, or if you want to approach someone for a portrait, or if you want to really ease them out, don't be afraid and kind of like break the ice, because most often than not, people will be very nice to you. But this is my experience, of course. It might not be yours. But have you thought, if things aren't working as well as you want them to, reflect on approach when it comes to photography and your subject matter? Are you open to photographing new things? Are you open to getting closer? As the old saying goes, you'll never know until you try. And that's another thing this book also reminded me of. As I went through it, I realized every photographer had a different approach. So what was there to lose in adapting, tweaking, or changing my own approach? But there are two more reminders this book gave me, and that was of course on the role of inspiration and becoming more cultured with other types/genres of photography. And this is super important for you bettering as a photographer, even if sometimes you want to talk about the same thing as, say, Alex Soth. The reality is that no two people see the exact same thing. And as Tarkovsky once said, the same book read by 1,000 people is 1,000 different books. So get acquainted with other photographers, understand or read about their vision or approach, and you might take a thing or two that you can apply to your own photography. And one more thing before we go, no matter where you are with projects or subjects, if you have identified your subject yet or not, if you have taken a few pictures or one, or thinking of taking pictures, write that down. Write down what it makes you feel, write down why you're attracted to that particular subject. Is it the lights? Is it the colors? Is it the idea that it gives you, the theme that it explores? How can you take that into more images, more work, and write those things down on a notebook or on your phone, whatever's more, convenient for you. I personally am an old school kind of gal. I like to print my work, and that side of my office is full of photos, and I just put it on the walls and I write annotations and stuff like that. It works for me. My partner thinks it's a cool and cheap decoration. Works for the both of us. So it's been all for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. It helps so much, and it gives me the feedback. Also, leave some feedback down below in the comment box. You can also write video ideas in this kind of style that you'd like me to touch on. We talked about subject today. We can talk about other things on the channel, or even philosophical quotes or something that we can discuss, because there's so much to learn. And if you want to learn why your first 10,000 photos are your worst, well, that video is right there.